high-grade Universal Century Hambrabi. Hey again everybody, it's Robert184, 2Rs2B's GundamReviews.net, and you've already seen the unbox and the parts of the high-grade Universal Century Hambrabi, so it's time to put this Zeta ally killer together and check it out in its MS and MA form. When he's all put together, you would have something that even Dan Aykroyd would be proud of, and when you put him on your shelf, this guy is going to stand out as by far one of the most unique MSs I think that anybody's ever seen. First of all, the color scheme. I'm a big fan of the two tones of blue that they've got there, or purple, whatever you want to call it. And also, more importantly, the white for the inner frame is not distracting at all, and that green piping, you see a chunk of it on the back, very little of it on the front, but that little bit of green and red up around the head and the dual mono eyes. Don't forget the other two on the shoulders and the back of the head is making this guy look really cool. To go along with the fact that you've got those holes down there on the legs and those wings are really at a good angle, I think this whole thing, but it's all going to be topped off by just how singularly awesome that upper body is between the shoulders there and the way that it looks like he's got the dual shoulder pads. To go along with that jet cone on the top of his head, everything about this guy is looking great so far. For mobility, I'll kick things off with a caveat that this guy feels a little bit loose so far, just too many things moving in too many places. But you can see that the legs are going to be ridiculous, as you can guess that they need to be for the transformation. The hips are on a moving white part there, so these can swivel back and forth, which you'd think is usually a good thing. But here, when you combine it with the fact that he's got a loose waist section, it just seems like everybody can move all around, including this armor here, which just seems to be more problematic than anything else. Off to the side, because they're just on round polycaps, they're not going to do much, but you do get nice bends there with the knees, and the feet are going to move around a fair bit, including going straight and off to the side about yay much. For the upper body, you already saw that that's pretty loose, but for the upper body, really, you sort of got to laugh at just how little there is. First of all, the wings can move up and down, and you've got this tail part, which can stretch out and poke somebody if they're attacking from behind. But overall, you're not going to get absolutely anything out of the head. These blue parts here on the shoulder should not be moving, and the white parts here, you can see that they've just got that little peg that's sticking in there. So you're going to be able to rotate these all around and get a nice bend across the elbow. If you wanted to have him punch himself in one of the mono eyes, you could do that, but you can't really reach across and touch the other shoulder. And finally, these claws are going to come down here, Wolverine's clone daughter X-23 sister style. Overall thoughts here for the mobility, it's great that he's got so many moving parts. It's going to set up a lot of dynamic options, especially if you get him off the ground. But in terms of just getting a straight symmetrical pose, you're going to have to do a really careful job of getting the shoulders lined up, all the various parts of the hips and the hips armor, so a little bit problematic. But then again, if you like making dynamic poses, it looks like this is going to be your traffic cone. Comparison time now, where you can see next to the Mark II, which is definitely a grade up in the form of the real variety, that the Hambrabi is going to have definitely the edge in the head and just back span there thanks to the wings on the back. But also the legs are looking pretty good, if not a little bit flimsy, just because of those small fins. Sort of adds to the whole shark-like motif though. But overall that Hambrabi is looking good, and I don't think that it needs all the textured multicolored panels that the real grades have. Next to Captain Grudex Jesta here, you can see what a few years is going to make in terms of Universal Century mobile suit design advances. Again, the 80s were the king of Transformers, whereas with Unicorn we've gone back to something a lot more practical and military looking, but the colors here quite a bit different with a much nicer cartoony feel to this one. For a more familiar feel, here it is next to the Adele. This is the #1 from the second generation of Gundam Age, part of the Diva team. You can get the 1 and 2. And you can see here that the colors are going to be very similar if you were looking to check out the painting guides for these, or perhaps make your own custom. And to mimic the horrible beginning of Yazan in Double Zeta, well, I guess we should have the Zeta Gundam in here in real grade if this was a few months in the future. But instead, we'll just have to have the Double Zeta Age 3 filling in, and you can see that the height comparison in terms of the top of the mono eyes, it looks like the eyes are about level, but everything else is looking quite a good guy, bad guy here. Arming this guy up is a lot more challenging though, because if you take a look at the way this weapon is going to be designed, you've basically got the trigger over there, and then you've got this part that sticks out back, which means it's going to get in the way of the forearm, and you've got these two parts which you'd think would stick around the forearm, but it's not going to work with this guy because of the claws, and not to mention the fact that it's just got that bar in the way, which means when you take a look at the art all around and the promo images, you'll see that it's going to be stuck off and hidden under the arm. But the minute you try to move it, you can just imagine that you're going to pop off this manipulator here. So it seems like this weapon, as used in many kits as it has been, Bandai, not a good design. To ground poses, where the fact that the wings don't move all that much, I thought that might be a knock against them, but I think it's dynamic enough what you can do with them. The legs are going to get you wherever you want them to be, but that weapon there is probably just going to end up to the Ziploc bag for eternity because it's really nothing but frustrations trying to do anything other than just stick it under the armpit there. But this guy was meant to be up in the air, and no matter what pose you want to do with it, again, you're going to have the legs are going to be able to get there. It's just going to be frustrating, get all the myriad of moving parts into the right place. The knees are going to look good except for that little bit of white that's exposed. Not a big fan of that. And these side hip guards are going to be problematic. They're going to get in the way, and you're going to have to twist them out. However, the beam sabers in hand, I really like the old school yellow to go along with the green and the red up there for the upper body. And the weapon in hand, the sea snake or whatever, is looking sharp as it shoots out there. No issues whatsoever with weight, except for the fact that it just sort of wants to rotate down, depending on how you put it up there in the hand. And I was hoping that the rifle slash beam saber a la the Zeta Gundam was going to help redeem it. But not really here. It's going to look really awkward as you can see that the bottom is as long as the top. The sea snake there is going to be pretty cheesy in hand, and of course this guy isn't going to be helped by the fact that you don't have movable mono eyes, so you can't really tell where to draw the attention of the person who's checking it out on your shelf, just in terms of how you're going to position the upper body, because you can't really do much with it. And of course the most frustrating thing being that even just trying to get this in hand, well, it fell out 3 times. Nothing really good about that rifle, I'd say. You're probably best off just sticking to the wired weapons and the trusty old beam sabers. For the transformation, I'd like to say this was something better than just little T-Rex arms with some claws on it, but really there's nothing positive to say about it, except it is sort of cool that you are able to get that 180-degree swing there, which is important for bringing the right parts forward to form the bird cone claws. You might think the legs have something complicated to add to the transformation, but note, you're just going to put the feet flat, and it does have these thrusters built into it, and then, with the mightiest alley-oop of all time, you're just going to take the legs and throw them up over the shoulders. And while I was really prepared to say that this guy looks like Epion's horrible ancestor before it evolved into something cool, it's not actually all that bad. It's not all that good, but depending at the angle you look at it from. First of all, these rifles here that were pretty useless when it was in MS mode are going to be a lot more viable here in MA form. The legs are going to look a little bit awkward as they go off to the side, and in the transformation you can guess that these thrusters are going to close up. The tail definitely adds something to it before the Vegans were even a gleam in Ezelkan's eyes as it pokes out of the back, and the claws, depending as you look at it from the front, are going to look okay. From the top they're going to look okay, and from the bottom they're just going to look like you've got a Gundam bent over with his legs over his head. Overall, not bad, but really, it's hard to say that this is good. With the custom mount on there, and you just attach this to an Action Base 2 sold separately, yes, if you're looking at it straight on, it's going to look pretty awkward again. You can see the 3 mono eyes there that are on the top slash back of the body. The legs and tail, well, they're going to look okay, so I suppose that really the best option, if you want to call it that, on the side of the box, they're going to show you the 3 different positions as it transforms from MS and sort of mid-form or an below shot before it shows the upper body. I'm not a big fan of the upper body, but if you saw this guy flying over top of you while you were inside the Mark II and you knew that you were about to be in a whole bunch of trouble, you could imagine that if this was on a better angle because it was actually on a movable Action Base 2 instead of this solid one, that it might look acceptable, if you want to put it that way. Or am I just trying to sell this too much? I'm sure you can guess that there's going to be lots of pros and cons to this mobile suit, so let me get my thoughts together and stick around for the final verdict, where I'll have a complete list so that ultimately you can do what matters, which is decide whether this is a kit that you might want to pick up, whether you're a fan of Zeta Gundam transforming mobile suits or the like. Anyway, everybody, as always, let me know what you think of the MS, the MA, the transformation, and of course this video, and thanks for watching. See you next time, everybody. Bye. Oh wait, I'm still a duck.